Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's an honor to join tonight in this debate. You know, Madam Speaker, a desperate government makes a transparent attempt to distract Canadians. Canadians who have been suffering. You know, I listened to my constituents in my riding of Fundy Royal, where individuals are struggling, families are struggling to make ends meet, struggling to put food on the table, struggling to pay their mortgage, pay their heating bill. And why is that, Madam Speaker? Well, it has something to do with a government that has doubled the cost of a mortgage, doubled the cost of rent, increased the cost of groceries, is piling on every April 1st new cost on driving your kids to a hockey game or getting yourself to work by increasing the carbon tax. So after piling on all these costs on Canadians, after making it so difficult for hardworking Canadians, and I include in this small business, which I'm going to speak about shortly, after all that, they offer up what amounts to be a tax trick. And Madam Speaker, if it wasn't so serious, if people weren't hurting so much, it would be laughable. Who would think of an idea that says, we're going to lift the GST off of a Christmas tree, but only if you buy the Christmas tree December 15th. If you buy it before then, you don't get that break. That's just a small sampling of the kind of complication that this is going to add and the misery that this is going to pile on small businesses at what is sometimes their most challenging time of year. So, Madam Speaker, today I had the opportunity to speak to a small business in my riding of Fundy Royal. They're in a small community, and small business in my riding, they're the backbone of our community. They give back so much. They're the ones that are coaching. They're the ones that are providing support to charities in the region. They're the ones that are helping out with those that need a hand. They're the ones that are providing employment in small communities. And this individual, with desperation in her voice, was telling me, after everything we went through with the pandemic, after barely hanging on, she said, I cannot implement this change that the government's brought in. I do not have the resources at the busiest time of the year for me to be able to change all my systems over to accommodate what this government has just dumped onto their laps. And Madam Speaker, any one of us would struggle to try to decipher what this government is doing. Now, CRA, ever so helpful, has come out with some guidelines. And we have to take a look at these guidelines, Madam Speaker. Exempt now for 2 months from the GST. Toys that imitate another item, whether real or imaginary, or involve building, creating, or assembling structures, objects, or models by using pieces, parts, materials, or modeling compound. Okay, that makes some sense. However, not exempt, Madam Speaker, toys and model sets that are marketed for adults. For example, adult Lego or train sets. Well, you can imagine, Madam Speaker, how is the small business owner in my riding supposed to decipher those things? CRA directive on what qualifies as a toy, again. Card games, including playing cards and Pokémon cards. So, Madam Speaker, a Pokémon card is eligible for this 2-month reprieve. However, if you buy your kids hockey cards, that is not eligible for the exemption. What? Video games will be tax-free. Physical video games, Madam Speaker. Now, that's the way, you know, when I was growing up and we finally got the opportunity to get an Atari, because someone else had bought a Nintendo, we got the Atari. That was a physical game. And then when someone else got a Super Nintendo and I got a Nintendo, again, a physical game. But now, young people, they're downloading video games. They're not buying a physical game. So according to the CRA, thanks to what this government has done, physical video games qualify. But online only and downloadable video games are not included, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, I can assure you that the people on that side of the House, the Liberal government, they don't understand the confusion that they've just wrought. But Canadians certainly aren't going to understand it, but you know who's responsible for all this, Madam Speaker, is the small business owner. It's this individual I spoke to today told me about how horrified she is that in trying to interpret this mess, that she will be on the hook, that CRA and this government will be coming after her if she gets it wrong, if she charges GST where she wasn't supposed to, or if she exempts it when she wasn't supposed to. Let's talk about children's clothing and footwear. So sports clothing, dancewear, such as jerseys and ski jackets and leotards, and dual-purpose swimwear that can reasonably be worn outside of sports or dance activities is exempt. However, specialized clothing and footwear designed exclusively for sports or those same recreational activities are not exempt, Madam Speaker. Adult clothing and footwear, if it's purchased for a child, so if you buy clothing for your child, but it happens to be adult size, again, not exempted. It goes on when we're talking about physical books. They say on the other side, physical books are tax-free. Okay, that's simple enough to me, but now look at how the CRA helpfully explains that. Guidebooks and atlases that do not mostly contain street or road maps. So if they do contain mostly street or road maps, they are not exempt. Magazines and periodicals that have no more than 5% of their printed space devoted to advertising. So for the entrepreneur in my riding who owns her business, who has to do all the accounting, if she sells a magazine that has 6% advertising, then it's not exempt. But if it's 5% advertising, it is exempt. How is she, at the busiest time of year, supposed to be able to decipher this mess? Now, the Liberals tell us that books are free. However, coloring books, scrapbooks, sticker books, sketchbooks, books designed primarily for writing on, such as address books, diaries, journals, notebooks, certain dictionaries, and collections of street or road maps, e-books and audiobooks, they are not going to be GST free. So, Madam Speaker, you can see just with that short example that's just scratching the surface. How I guarantee no one in here understands what I just said, and the individuals in my riding that are trying to run a small business should not be expected to have to deal with this. Now, Madam Speaker, at a time when people are suffering, what we're offering on this side of the House is actual help. We're offering to axe the tax, axe the carbon tax that has increased the cost of everything on my constituents. On my constituents who are seniors, on my constituents who have young families, on my constituents who are entrepreneurs, farmers. We've increased the cost of heating your home. We've increased the cost of driving to work. We've increased the cost of taking your kids to hockey. This government has increased the cost of food because we're taxing farmers, we're taxing truckers, we're taxing everyone along the supply chain that provides food onto a family's table has been taxed, and therefore, in Canada, our cost of increase of food has outpaced the U.S. by 36%. Well, what's the difference between us and the U.S. right now? We have a carbon tax and they don't. And our families, Canadian families, suffer for the misguided policies of this government. So, Madam Speaker, according to the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, only 4% of small business owners believe they will have stronger sales as a result of these temporary measures. However, they go on to say that small firms, perhaps like the constituent I was talking to today, will face approximately $1,000 in additional costs to reprogram their point-of-sale system to remove and then reinstate applicable taxes. And I think in some cases that $1,000 may be an underestimated. A constituent of mine wrote to me today, a business owner, the GST holiday is crazy. To take the GST off of takeout, restaurant, alcohol, and considering the fresh, healthy groceries don't have the tax, is only taking taxes off less healthy, junk food options. Madam Speaker, my constituents get it. Small business gets it. We get it on this side of the House. We are going to provide real tax relief for Canadians by axing the tax, and we're going to stand up against the gimmicks from the Liberal government.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Aaron O'Toole got it also. So did the 337 other Conservative candidates that ran in the last federal election, in which the member that just spoke was one of them. Their election platform said that they would do the same thing. Their leader then actually tweeted how he was going to provide this GST break for the holiday season. And then you get the leader of the Conservative Party who retweeted the idea. Now the members seem to express concerns or excuses as to how they have managed to get themselves into that pretzel twist and turn and flip-flop so they can try to justify their vote. The bottom line, Madam Speaker, is they say they want to give a tax break to Canadians, and when it comes right down to a vote, what do? The same thing they did when it came to giving a break and cutting the taxes for the middle class. They voted against it. Does the member not see the hypocrisy that's there?
Member for Fundy Royal.
Speaker, this is the House of Commons. Us as members of Parliament, we represent our constituents. So I'm going to allow one of my constituents to answer that question. They wrote, ridiculous, no break on groceries, fuels, or utilities. I was just reading the PM's plan to take a tax break, and I am not impressed. First off, we all know the government will want to recover this lost revenue later, and that will hit our wallets again. The GST holiday is crazy. So, Madam Speaker, I couldn't agree more. My constituents understand, as I just illustrated, that this is a trick that is incredibly complex for our small businesses, and that only Conservatives, we've been talking about this for a long time, Madam Speaker, only Conservatives are committed to real tax relief for hard-working Canadian families.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. I would like to thank my colleague. He made a list of all of the goods that were part of the bill. The government keeps saying that these are essential goods, and we keep hearing the word essential. I would like to hear his opinion on the list that he read, like I did, and what he thinks of what these essential needs are by removing a tax on champagne. Thank you.
For Fundy Royal.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague for a question. Well, that's what's so perplexing about this, is the essentials that Canadians are really struggling to pay right now. What I hear from my constituents is fuel for their vehicle to get them and their kids, get themselves to work, get their kids to school, food to put on their table, heating their home, paying their mortgage, paying rent. Those are the essentials that Canadians are suffering as they try to pay. Those are the exact expenses that we on this side of the House are addressing with our commitment to axe the carbon tax that has increased the cost of all those things. What I listed off from what this government's doing is a confusing list where they purport to cut maybe the cost of a leotard, but then not the cost of skates or ski boots. They purport to, cut the cost of a magazine, but only if it has 5% less of advertising. They've created a monster. They know it. It was rushed out, and Canadians deserve so much better.
Questions and comments, the Honourable Member for Edmonton Grisba.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'll thank my honourable colleague for his speech. He mentioned in his speech that it'd be fantastic if we had no GST off of utilities. Well, he had the chance. This member right now, including every Conservative, had the chance to remove GST off of all home heating. New Democrats, we fought for that in the last term. The two major parties, the Liberals and the Conservatives, they joined up and they voted against GST removal off of utilities. How shameful that is. That he says now today, how disingenuous this member says now today. What if we had an opportunity to get GST off of home heating? Shame on him that he would vote against that measure and then come to this place and try to say the opposite. Does he have anything to state or to explain himself why he voted against that?
For Fundy Royal in 15 seconds.
Madam Speaker, where to begin? And this is a government that has increased the cost on Canadians exceptionally, beyond anything we've ever seen before, doubling the cost of a mortgage, doubling the cost of rent, increasing the cost of home heat. And it's all due to their carbon tax, their inflationary measures. And how was it made possible, Madam Speaker? How is it possible this Liberal government has been able to do that with the support of that member and the NDP when they voted 24 times to increase the carbon tax? Madam Speaker, we'll take no lessons on supporting Canadians from that bunch.